I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. All right, so let's look at the agenda. So we have to add an item under approved payments in the consent agenda. That's the EOC Palumbo Ashley mechanical payment.
Also add the clean sweep under the consent agenda.
And item number 10, this is regarding the HVAC system for Village Hall. Item number 11, a park reunion. And then item numbers 12 and 13. 12 is related to Memorial Pool, the groundwater wells. 13 is related to Mountain Rest Road, groundwater wells. And do we have on here the information about clean sweep? Shouldn't that be on the agenda? Wasn't there a request to use the park?
Yeah, it's on the consent agenda. You have to add it.
Hello?
Yeah.
Ariana, do you have that?
Yes, it's on the consent agenda. You have to add it. Can you not hear me?
Now I can hear you. I did not hear you before.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's already on the consent agenda and you have to add it.
Okay,
I also
there.
put it in the chat because I thought you couldn't hear me.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. Now I can hear you. So we're adding it under item number 3 in the consent agenda, letter B. Clean sweep park use application for April 24th.
Second. Oh, or I don't know.
So motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Did we do the land acknowledgement?
Actually, we forgot it.
Do it now.
Okay, as a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people.
And then announcements, the Ulster County annual application period for agricultural district. So this is the 3rd meeting that this has been on our agenda. So we're just making sure that the public is aware. And firehouse update, do we want to provide any news about the construction project? Bill's putting on a hard hat. I can't hear you, Bill. Sorry, you got to unmute.
Sorry. What an intro. They've started to dig for the foundation. Work's proceeding. We're still behind 3 weeks. I heard in our conversation last week that they might start pouring the footings as early as the end of the week or mid next week. But again, we're just about 3 weeks behind due to weather and various other setbacks. The mitigation for the wet spot to the wet areas has been basically solved as far as I've heard. So we're moving forward. It's all good.
Sounds good. Okay, so we have a update from the New Paltz Opioid Overdose Prevention and Response Team.
This is just a message. It's a video from Phoenix that you can click on and information about their activities. So they've launched a lot of new stuff, including this video on YouTube that you can link to from our agenda. And we talked about it last time and we said that we were going to, mention it at every meeting. The opioid crisis, the number of opioid fatalities doubled in 2020 over 2019, and we're already well ahead of even that trend this year. So, really important to call attention to that continually. I hate to put you on the spot, Michelle, but I know that you were working on some stuff related to messaging and a program to get out the word on the Good Samaritan stuff. I don't know why I'm putting you on the spot, but if you want to mention that.
Yeah, Resisterhood has been working with the village board, town board, police department, and Phoenix, Kawamoto, and Jim Tinger on just an awareness campaign for the Good Samaritan law. I posted one of the flyers we created today on the New Paltz community group, and I put it on also my village trustee page. There are two different flyers, one that's just very simple, that says, if you are with someone who overdoses, please call 911. The Good Samaritan law protects you. I can't remember the verbiage right now. And the other one is just more specific to that same point. So these are meant to share on social media. So hopefully people will share. I know in the community group on Facebook, you can't share directly from there. So it is on my village trustee page as well as Resisterhood's page. And we'll get it up on our village page too, I'm sure.
And the gist of it is basically, if you have less than 8 ounces, you're not going to get arrested. And, we've seen this trend of hesitancy. I mean, I can personally name names of lives that were lost that I know. The folks that were with them were afraid to call, and they hesitated to call, and they took too long. So people really need to know that when help is needed, that please don't be afraid about getting arrested for the drugs that are in your house. Obviously, there's some particulars to that. If you're like a mega drug dealer with more than 8 ounces, it's going to be different. But if you have some pot or you have some stuff in your house, please, 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 please just call 911 because people need help.
Yeah, and also, KT, I did get some clarification from Rob on that. It's of any substance.
So the 8 ounce rule doesn't matter if it's pot or.
Doesn't matter, 8 ounces.
It's a lot.
Yes.
So, sorry, I was trying to pull up Michelle's page at the same time, but that's basically the gist of it. Please, please, please don't be scared about criminal consequences. And the law has prioritized life. So we're really trying to get the word out on that.
I have some announcements if you're done with that.
Yep.
Okay, so the Village Hall Pollinator Garden Ecoscaping Project has a soil building event on Saturday, the 27th at noon. So there's all the information you need for that, like all over the website and on social media. But basically, the plan is to put down, to build some soil. So to, place down some compost and mulch in front of the building. It's going to be pretty, simple work, but I'm personally really excited to actually get my hands dirty with the volunteers who've been working so hard on this project. So this is basically to prepare for the Bee City Pollinator Friendly Landscaping Project, which will totally transform the front of our village hall. So for, if you want to help out or if you have any questions, definitely if you want to help out, please RSVP at npbcity@villageofnewpaltz.org. You can reach out to me any of the ways you all know how, and I can hook you up with that info as well. If you have a shovel, bring it. Of course, wear your mask, wear your double mask. And yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to share is because the village and town of New Paltz were the first municipalities to ever pass a resolution in opposition to the dance camera power plant that is now almost to the next phase of, the permitting. So basically, it's the Title X hearing is happening next week, March 31st. So I just wanted to share that, I'm signed up to share a comment in the evening session, and I'm going to reference that historic resolution in it for sure, even though I only have 3 minutes. I'm going to make sure to shout out New Paltz, and I posted information about that hearing on my trustee social media for anyone who's interested. I think New Paltz will be showing up. We tend to. Oh, and then one more update, housing. So I know that the federal CDC, eviction moratorium has a timeline to sunset pretty soon at the end of this month, I believe. But, please ignore that. Because in New York State, evictions should not be happening except under some circumstances, apparently, until May 1st. We are still in the middle of a public health crisis. So, if you need help navigating that, the Landlord Tenant Relations Council and I have been helping people connect with resources and all of that. It's a really easy form to fill out, basically, that declares a hardship. And this applies to tenants and it applies to property owners. Like you can't get, you can't get evicted because of, a COVID related hardship. And yes, a hardship includes not being able to move during this time. And you cannot, face a foreclosure or start, facing like bad mortgage things like extra fees and all of that marks against you in any way during this time. But you do have to fill out that hardship form in those cases. So I'll continue posting that around social media, but you can, always reach out to landlordtenant@villageofnewpaltz.org. And we are so happy to help you out.
Thanks, Alex.
Tim, I have one announcement.
Go ahead.
Just a reminder that the New York State burn ban is in effect. It was in effect March 16th, goes through May 14th. We've had a fairly dry March season, despite the snow melt and a little bit of rain we've gotten. So you can still have a small campfire in your outdoor grill. And if you're planning on having a flag burning ceremony, you can have that. But any kind of leaf debris, brush fires, that kind of thing, nope, you got to wait till May. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to motion to open the public hearing regarding the tentative budget for fiscal year 21-22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone from the public provided comments regarding the tentative budget that was posted on the village website? So Ariana in the chat said, no, we did not receive anything. Okay, I'd like to motion
We
that
have none.
None. I'd like to motion that we close the public hearing for the tentative budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next public hearing was opened at our last meeting. Did we receive any comments regarding the short-term rental law? We did not, is what we hear from Ariana in the chat. I'd like to continue to keep this proposed law open. And did we get any feedback regarding the public hearing for the code change on a section of Huguenot Street to make it one way?
There was that one person, I think all of you were on the email.
This was after the meeting 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I'm
Was it
trying
Judy?
to find it.
It was from Miriam.
Oh, there was an email from Miriam.
That's all I remember. I read it. I could find it. Thanks, Miriam, for the comment.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
I'd like to suggest we close the public hearing and we put this to the side for now because I don't think we want to make any action related.
Do you want to just quickly look at this note from Miriam?
So Miriam shared some great feedback as a resident of Huguenot Street, asking us to please amend the law or vote it down as currently proposed. She does not support reducing traffic from Broadhead to Mulberry to protect precious historic Huguenot Street buildings and calm traffic in a heavily traveled recreational zone. She does support that, obviously, sorry. However, as written, it would also divert extra traffic to enter Route 32 at Mulberry Street near Zero Place. This is already a busy corner with foot and bike traffic to Moriello Park, Stewart's, the rail trail, Nyquist. It is a complicated zone as traffic from Mulberry and H.W. Du Bois, as well as the Empire Trail, is compressed in a small area. All these before Zero Place opens. True. I realize there are potential problems with both the Mulberry and Broadhead intersections, but would hope to see the path reversed with southbound traffic only on the block. An alternative might be changing the exit at Broadhead onto Route 32 to right turn only. That would change traffic on the block and keep cars from entering the northbound lane of Route 32 near a curve. The choice between Broadhead and Mulberry as the exit path is clear to me. Another consideration, did the planners for this law observe auto behavior at Mulberry and Huguenot? Is already a navigational challenge. Yeah.
Okay, so this is more mixed feedback. I think the reason that we had this public hearing, and we stated so from the beginning, is that we wanted to seek public input on the possibility of changing this section of Huguenot Street to one way. And I think it was a valuable exercise because we received a great number of comments via email, and people called us and people made public comments. And it feels like the sentiment is that, from a big picture concept, it seems like a reasonable idea. There may be unintended consequences. There may be some challenges that we can't anticipate. So I think I'm going to second KT's motion to close the public hearing and identify this as another public hearing where we were looking for feedback, and we got the feedback, and it seems like this is not a clear case to make a change to our code. So, similar to what we did when we were considering changing the rules regarding the length of people's lawns. When we have public hearings, it's not because we're looking to rubber stamp a law. We're actually looking for community feedback on proposals. So, all in favor of going ahead and closing this public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any public comment on other topics not on this evening's agenda? No. I'm going to go ahead and motion that we move the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So are we, so this is set for 7:30. We're going to hear from Chair Tom Olson and maybe some other folks from HPC about the HPC code revision that we had explored almost a year ago now. So we'll wait and hear back from those guys. Does anyone want to address item number 1 and connect any of these agenda items to item number 1?
I messed up my announcements because I wanted to make connections between those, like the housing and the climate issues. So that stands for now. I'll let someone else make the connections to the other agenda items. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to item number 3. We have a letter from the Hudson River Valley Greenway. This is an exciting project. So for over the last couple of years, we've been working with the Ulster County Planning Department, and there was federal transportation money. We did a study on ways to improve our rail trail, and the Hudson River Valley Greenway, they were involved in doing the design and construction work for the Empire State Trail. There's some money that's still available, and they're going to be able to invest that money in a 3.5-mile section of our rail trail. And then Open Space Institute is going to administer this project. So this letter is just stating that this is happening. So I just wanted to take the temperature of the board and make sure that we were comfortable with this project. I don't think we actually need to vote on it, but let's go ahead. Well, show of hands, is everyone in favor of having this project realized with assistance from OSI and Greenway?
I'm about it. Thanks, OSI.
And I wanted to thank all the committee members who served during the planning process. We had folks from Huguenot Street, some other community volunteers. I mean, off the top of my head, Rich Gottlieb from Rock and Snow was involved. And then Craig Shankles was involved. Marietta Snyder from Huguenot Street was definitely involved. And the Walker Valley Land Trust, Christy participated. I'm probably leaving out some names, but you know, that was the group that was involved in working with the planning firm that helped us identify a lot of these things that Greenway is now going to help us realize. So that's exciting. And the other piece to all this is that this work has to get done this year because the money is available now. So now we have to move ahead. Okay, let's move to item number 4. Do we want to talk about this, or this is kind of a placeholder because we do have to consider Schedule B on in our code, in our zoning code? I mean, it kind of ties a little bit to the next item that I added. Does anyone want to comment on this directly, or should I just jump into item number 5? So what I tried to do with item number 5 is, I was looking at the, some of the county's work and their suggestions on how they could help communities like ours with some housing smart initiatives. And, I felt like we were doing a pretty solid job of moving in these directions already. So I just wanted to put 3 things that we've been working on. And even, with a couple of these laws, I sent them to Dennis Doyle at Ulster County Planning, and he was doing some editing on our behalf. He gave me some really useful suggestions in terms of our accessory dwelling unit law. So we have drafts of that law. We also have the short-term rental law that is being considered via public hearing right now. And then I've circulated to the board. It's not ready for full public consumption, but I did share it with the planning department at Ulster County, a concept where we would replace the commercially zoned districts in the village that are labeled currently B1 and B2 and use the NBR that we more recently vetted. Have our commercially zoned districts be districts where we're requiring new construction be multi-story mixed use. I was actually at I was a speaker at the Paltz Club last Thursday evening, and I shared these 3 laws conceptually with that group, and I sought feedback from them. And I was actually really encouraged because there were a lot of solid questions asked about why we were considering it. And they seem to wholeheartedly support, what we're trying to do as a board to make, to improve housing situations, to potentially address affordability, to encourage density for environmental reasons. But I think a lot of the things that we subscribe to, the gentlemen from the Paltz Club were quick to understand and were supportive of the concepts that I laid out that we've been chewing on as a board. Anything
Well,
else? Go ahead.
Landlord Tenant Relations Council is going to be talking about all those things tomorrow night. Everyone read
Fantastic.
the whole county housing action plan. It's like such a long thing. And so we're also going to talk about that and kind of about how all these different initiatives and then also ideas like might, fit in with that plan.
Yeah, I was gonna just say, while we're providing a list of affordable housing initiatives to our community, we shouldn't forget the things that we've already done. This is just what we're doing now. And we do have an affordable housing law. And I would even put Landlord Tenant Relations Council in that category because it definitely improves quality of life, which has a reciprocal effect. It's all related, right? And there's probably other stuff too. That I'm not thinking of that is, maybe a little just off the radar. But I think that would be a good idea to get that list together and maybe just put that on the website or something like that. We did talk at Affordable Housing Board. I let them know about, I don't know how much they've dove in. That's great that the landlord tenant folks are going to dive into the county plan. But, Evelyn Wright at the county offered to come and, do town halls or forums or presentations or whatever. So while we review that, which, yes, we've already done and have in process a lot of the things that they're recommending for other places. Although other places don't have our capacity. So let's be fair about that. Yeah.
I was actually also on the call today with the folks who are reviewing SUNY New Paltz's accreditation. And, I guess part of that review includes the town gown relationship. And one of the things that we highlighted is that we do have this landlord tenant relations council. I think it's a great example of the importance of, the college benefits from the community, and that, we have local law that, supports the existence of this commission, and we're constantly looking for participation from college students. We've even hosted meetings on campus. So it was nice to be able to relay that as an example of something that our village provides to the college, because there were plenty of other examples of things that we receive as benefits by being a host community as well. It's really a two-way street. Anything else before we move on to agenda item number 6?
I think we should jump back to number 2 because Tom's here.
That sounds great. Hey, Tom.
KT, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm here. Thanks. You guys ripped through that agenda. So can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great.
Perfectly.
So what I wanted to do this evening is give you an update on where the Historic Preservation Commission is with its thinking about the code revisions that we talked about almost exactly a year ago, and have been working on for the better part of 3 years pretty focusedly. I think everybody remembers that we were really just getting to the point of feeling like it was time for public hearings a year ago, and then everything, of course, went crazy. And I think we took the course of caution by not trying to have public hearings under COVID circumstances. And I agree with that. So we just kind of put it all on hold. But I did notice that quality of life issues continue to get talked about. I'm thinking especially of like the short-term rental law discussion, the one-way street on Huguenot, or one-way section of Huguenot. And that sort of tipped me off that, you know, maybe we should get back to that, COVID or no COVID. And I called Tim a couple of weeks ago and said, you know, I think we should get back to this, and he agreed. So that's kind of where we are a year later, kind of a year lost, but not really, because in that time we've gone back to the drawing board. We listened to some of the concerns that we heard from the planning board roughly a year ago, and obviously listened to the comments that you all made last time I presented. And I think we have a much better proposal now as a result of those comments. So if it's all right, everybody, I'd like to just draw your attention to the denser of the two documents that you would have gotten from Ariana. Is everybody in sight of those? I'm going to just kind of summarize those, but I'm hoping that you can follow along. Basically, where we are is we've come up with 4 things that we think should happen, and should happen pretty quickly. And at the end of what I'm going to say, I'll talk about why I think this is a moment of urgency. The first one is that we are increasingly uncomfortable with the name Historic Preservation Commission. This was kind of the default thing you called a group like this 20 years, 30 years ago. But I think everybody can understand that, you know, it has started to take on some connotations that we don't really want, that would suggest kind of heritage at the expense of progress, heritage at the expense of diversity. So our first suggestion is that the commission change its name officially to the Design Review Board and Historic Preservation Commission. And the idea there is that it kind of, I don't know, it makes more prominent what I think we should be doing going forward, which is reviewing designs for renovations and for new for new projects. And it kind of makes secondary the mission of historic preservation, which is more of an advocacy and education mission. And that's something that's taken us a while to see more clearly. But so the first proposal is that our name would change, and we would kind of foreground design review, which would be, I think, what we would do on a monthly basis, on a more regular basis. And then secondarily, we are the group, or, you know, the primary group in the village that's responsible for kind of educating about the architectural preservation of the community. Number 2 is that we would begin to review a lot more projects than we do now. I think everybody knows this, but at the risk of repeating myself, I'll just say, at the moment, the only projects that we get to review by law are on Huguenot Street within the district, or one of just over a dozen individual structures that we have landmarked in the community. What that means is up and down Main Street, we don't have any say. We have no legal place in the system to bring the expertise that we have and the things that we know to design, whether it's renovation or new construction. And I think we all know there have been some mistakes on Main Street, and I'm a little concerned that another one might be brewing at the upper end of Main Street, as something is happening with 2 different facades, and we aren't in the loop. And it's nobody's fault, like nobody's hiding anything. The system is just set up this way. Number 3 is to establish an equivalent district in the downtown area using the state and national register district that's already been mapped out, already been approved at the state and national level, but doesn't come with any local oversight. I'm just going to put a little tag on that third one, because in our earlier discussions and in my preliminary discussions with Tim, I know Tim had a lot of enthusiasm for extending that district all the way up to the eastern border of the village on Main Street. So basically all of Main Street plus the state and national districts. And I think that's something I'd like to hear your thoughts on as soon as we can, because I would like to move forward toward some consensus around what that downtown district is. That district, by the way, has been on the books since 2009. It's a real honor in New York State to have your downtown meet those state and national criteria, but we ironically have no local jurisdiction or role in what happens within that. And then number 4, and this is definitely related to the expanded vision that I'm talking about, we would establish a long form and a short form for projects that would come before us. So the long form would basically be the form that we've been using for 20 years. It asks a series of detailed questions. Applicants need to attach photographs. Depending on the project, they may need to have drawings. We've never insisted on architectural drawings, but we need to know what we're approving. And so that long form would continue to be used on Huguenot Street, continue to be used for the locally landmarked properties, but would then be extended to the community at large. And that would give us the freedom to do much like what we do with a seeker review, to make a determination that this application requires a long form, or no, it doesn't. It requires a short form, in which case we're asking much simpler, more basic questions just to try to avoid something that's going to have an adverse effect on neighbors and neighborhoods, right? So we're not necessarily preserving, but just trying to hold the line against something that neighbors could find objectionable, or the community could find objectionable. We would also, in all of those cases, have the option to say, we actually don't need an application from you. So let's just say that Michelle buys a new house and wants to do something very minor. She wants to replace her windows with energy efficient windows. We would talk about that. We would understand what the project is. And depending on the house, depending on the circumstances, we might say, you know what, you don't have to do any form. We've noted what you're doing and it's done. Conversely, you know, if Michelle bought a historic house and wanted to put an addition on it, we would definitely be asking for more information that would be included on one of those two forms, with the idea, you know, we hope not to restrict her. Sorry, Michelle, I keep using you as my example, but you know, anybody, but to give guidance to people who don't necessarily do this for a living, and might also be kind of at the mercy of a contractor who may be insensitive to some of these architectural issues, may see a bigger profit margin in doing it one way over another way, leaving you with something that, you know, maybe as a homeowner, you're not going to be very happy with in the long run. So everybody, those are the 4 things that we're now thinking about. It's definitely a scaled back version of what we presented last year. And I think the real breakthrough, and this was helped by Will Frank and also our colleagues and sort of overseers in Albany at the State Office of Historic Preservation, who pointed out that there are communities that do this very routinely. And I've got some examples of communities that have a short form just to kind of hold the line on something that would cross the line in terms of neighbors, and then a long form that, according to the community standards, would get into a much higher level of review with the presumption of a higher level of fidelity to what that original structure was or what the neighborhood is. If it's okay, I'm just going to go to the second sheet really quickly. And I'm really trying to be quick about a lot of work here, but that's the one that's entitled Workflow. And what this is intended to do is just kind of show you what the pragmatics of this would look like. So in the case of Huguenot Street, locally landmark properties, and the new downtown district, those applications would come directly to us. It may be the building department that is first tipped off that somebody wants to do a project because they call up and say, do I need a permit to do this or that? And they would refer us. But otherwise, we do a lot of outreach. Every single year, we send a letter reminding property owners on Huguenot Street and the 11 individual property owners that they need to remember that if they want to do exterior things, they have to come to us. According to this little workflow, so the process there is we are legally entitled and actually legally obliged to make a determination that's binding. So that I want to make really clear, that's kind of the purest, highest case where the stakes are the highest and the process is well documented and well established. And we actually have determination that then become binding on the applicant and enforceable by the building department. The other scenarios that I'm describing here would be coming from the building department. So the building department gets an inquiry or a request for a permit. They would forward that to us if it has anything to do with exteriors. I want to remind everybody that if somebody wants to redo a bathroom, there may be a permit involved in that, but we would have nothing to do with where your shower is. Absolutely nothing to do with insides. We would evaluate what was told to the building department, make contact with the applicant, and we would determine that no applications needed, or a short form should be filled out, or a long form, depending on the scope of the project. Then our proposal is we would send a formal report back to the building department. And this is what is really different, because up till now, this has been very ad hoc. The building department, if it senses that maybe we should be involved, it lets us know. The same thing with the planning board. It's all very ad hoc. And so are our responses back. It's typically an email from me to Corey or to John saying, yeah, we talked about this, it looks okay, or we have these concerns. But we feel very strongly that this should be a uniform form that's defensible if ever challenged. And at that point, we would hope that the building department would very seriously consider our recommendations. So we're not making a claim on a binding decision, but we would hope that it would amount to the same thing, because we're all in the same community and we hope we want all the same thing. And then last of all, the planning board, same sort of thing. Something's going to come to the planning board, whether it's new construction or major renovation. We would evaluate what it is, we would make a determination, and we would send that, again, formal recommendation to the planning board. It becomes a matter of record, and we would hope that they would follow that. What I've put in the form is we want to have an escape clause if the planning board really objects to what we've recommended. We think it's probably in the community's interest for that to be something that can be overruled or overturned by the planning board. I would like to see 4 out of 5 planning board members say that. I could be persuaded that 3 out of 5 might be enough. And that would be based on the hope that, minds think about the same way on most of these things. But we feel strongly that, if we're putting recommendations forward, the assumption is that they're going to be good recommendations, they're going to be grounded in good practices, and that it's going to be very easy for the building department and the planning board to say, nope, this is what you have to do. So everybody, that's the workflow that we're imagining. The last thing that I wanted to say is that I have been working with John on the planning board, and that has been a really positive change because we have conferred, we've actually gone over these recommendations together. He is in favor of it. He wants the help so that the planning board can focus on things like drainage and things like setbacks and, the bigger stuff in some ways, and traffic and lots of other things that the planning board is charged with. So the planning board is in support. I feel like the community is in support. Obviously, we haven't had a chance to test that really in the last year. And I also feel, and this is really the last thing I'm going to say, I think that we're quickly moving from kind of orange level into red level in the community. We've got some really big projects planned and talked about. The NBR is going to be a totally different place within 5 years, certainly within 10 years. And if we don't have some design standards, what's going to happen is every individual developer is going to come with his or her idea. And pretty much that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be uniform. There aren't going to be broad standards. And the process is going to be driven by all the considerations that a developer might want, many of those having to do with profitability and low cost, bang for buck kind of thing. And I feel like if we miss this chance, 5 years from now, we're going to be singing a sad song because there isn't much that the planning board can do on the aesthetic side, because really they're bound by code, principally that's what they have to do. And the second thing is what I referred to just a second ago. There are projects going on right now on Main Street, and we don't know what they are. We know that facades are being changed, things are being pulled down. We don't know where it's going because there is no mechanism for us to know about that. And we don't have any way of overseeing kind of the jewel of our community, which is that Main Street corridor and the streets on either side. So I really do feel like, we've had lots of orange and red in the last year, but architecturally speaking and community planning speaking, I really think that we're on the cusp of something where this village is going to get transformed, definitely at the north end and quite possibly in the center. And now we're talking about a major annexation to the south. And there just isn't, it's nowhere in the master plan. The planning board's hands are tied.
Tom, can you, what projects are you talking about? I'm just really confused.
So the project that Roddy and Mohammed have already proposed, that's well into the planning board. That's a really big structure. I think everybody knows that, right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's almost the size of Zero Place. Across the street, I guess it's a hair cutter and a couple of offices. That building's for sale.
Yeah. Okay. But that's been for sale for years. Yeah.
Yep. But now we're going to start seeing action.
Absolutely right. And that's why we would need some sort of review process. Okay. So what other buildings?
So then, for a couple of years now, we've heard from the Lalo Group in the middle of the village. And then the most recent one is this, I don't know where it stands at the moment, but this annexation of the Moriello property, that's transformative, right? That's 200 plus living units.
Okay.
So that's what I was referring to, Tim. I think the other thing is we're going to start to see momentum in the NBR. I think that the enthusiasm for buildings of that size and style is going to start to creep south. And I think it's got a lot of room to creep north. There's a lot of undeveloped.
Yeah, that gives me some context.
Yeah. So everybody, I'm sorry that was long, but believe me, it was actually short compared to how much work we've been doing in the last couple of months. What I would love to do now is just hear your thoughts on whether this seems like the right direction, whether in general this has the blessing of the board, whether we should get down to details that you're comfortable or uncomfortable with, and when you think realistically we can start to invite public hearings.
Tom, what's your take on like the discussion of design within the NBR zoning as it stands now?
Take in what sense? Like how it gets decided?
Well, just that the NBR includes some sort of design review process. There are standards in the zoning.
Right. But they tend to be the big stuff, Tim. I mean, masses and distance from Chestnut. And you know what I mean, obviously those things are very fundamentally a matter of concern. But, you know, we've also, doesn't say anything about materials, doesn't say anything about finishings. I don't think there's anything there about lighting. I mean, these are
Well, there's definitely lighting, and because there is that, the village has some lighting standards. It's not in the code, but it refers to those lighting standards.
Okay, yeah, those
in
are
the
pretty
NBR.
basic though, right? I mean,
Yep,
it's just,
yep.
yeah, night safe lighting, right?
I mean, I just bring up the NBR because there's no standards in any other zone that would speak to any of this. So
well,
at least that's a step in that direction.
yeah, and it's a positive one. And I, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not actually that current, or it's been a while since I looked at the NBR standards, but they are definitely our most modern take at this or try at it. But the rest of the village is kind of hanging out there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like what we've tried to do, you know, in the interim, while we're, you know, waiting for this process to be finalized, you know, just having introductory conversations with developers or builders and your committee. Like you've done a little bit of that with some other property owners. You know, could we do that in the interim with some of the properties that you just identified?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in some sense we have, and you've brokered one of those, you know, where on a volunteer basis, we have a sit down, and usually developers just want to hear, just tell me what the guidelines are. Tell me where the safety rails are, and I'll work within those. Because it's so expensive and frustrating for them not to know what it is, and then to find out well into the process and have to redo drawings or go back to architects. But sure, that's, you know, we can start reaching out to some of the local developers and engineers and architects and do a little listening.
But I think if you're working with, you have an improved connection as you work with Chair John Litton on the planning board, you know, maybe that's, you know, what we should be doing, at least right now, is, you know, make sure that he brokers those introductory meetings.
Sure.
Because I think, like you just said, most developers, they're appreciative of the feedback, and like we've joked about this idea before, and that most developers kind of view it as like free consulting. It's like, well, you're going to give me some useful ideas that otherwise I would have to pay some other professional for, and you guys enjoy looking at this stuff and thinking about these things. Like, help me, you know, share your good ideas. Yeah, I think most of the time that's the response you're going to get. So, you know, if there are projects on the planning board agendas, I think, you know, asking John to make those intros would be, you know, a good interim step while we're, you know, before we haven't even set a public hearing for this proposed code change.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Thank you.
I definitely echo, you know, the need for clarity. I think that benefits everybody. And I definitely support your workflow ideas that bake in more formal process, because those types of mechanisms keep us, it's smoother and more efficient, right?
Yeah, and legal, KT. I mean, one of the things that we've just been scrupulous about in HPC deliberations is everything's documented. You know, I think
you're an amazing crew. I mean, I have to see, when I see you guys on the agenda, and, you know, I'm just so grateful that we have, you know, there's a couple issue areas in the village right now, climate and you and landlord tenant, where we're just like are hot with volunteers that are amazing, and just abundant gratitude for that.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
I think that, like Tim, what he was just saying, and everything that you've been saying, Tom, really articulate the strengths of this proposal. but I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that I still just have this unease about the subjectivity, as well as the impact on affordability. Like you say words like uniformity, and I'm like, and I don't think I'm alone in New Paltz in this. So I think that there's just more to come, and that we can address these issues is what I want to clear
And
that.
I'm not naive that, you know, there's nothing that's a cakewalk in New Paltz or most communities. Kate,
I just think I remember, and it's been a year, so forgive me. Like there were things that you responded when I voiced my concerns about the subjectivity, you know, about, you know, that this isn't just a team of volunteers just randomly, you know, you are, you know, obviously, you know, your stuff. And as well, you've referred to, you had like models and documents and stuff. So I think the more that we can really flesh out how this will be objectively looked at, would be really helpful. You know, Tim just mentioned the MBR. There is that little section on design standards. I mean, I was the one that pushed to pare that back, because this is it. I really struggle with this, because I absolutely understand and see the needs as you articulate them. I just don't want to fix the problem, but then also stir up this other stuff that I think we can avoid unless we're really forthright about it. And it's, you know, like I said, the subjectivity, the impact on affordability, and just this idea, you know, design standard sounds very, I don't have a good reaction to that. But I also know, like, I agree with Tim, like the developers, this and clarity and all that. And, you know, it being amorphous at any point doesn't help, right?
I don't think it does help. KT, could I ask, I mean, some of this might be semantics, but are you more comfortable with design guidelines? Because I really think that's closer to what we're talking about, you know, rather than saying you must do this, but you must work within these. Is that more comfortable?
Yeah, it is.
I kind of feel like what you're articulating is a preview of what, you know, members in the community are likely to say, like, don't touch my design. But I think, you know, most things need guidelines, or, you know.
I don't even think it's design guidelines. I feel like it's design consultancy. I feel like the developers actually receive something for free. And you know, Tom and I and others have been talking about this concept for years. And I think the goal is to never say, well, you can't do that cheap siding and you have to buy you know, this expensive premium wood. I think that the goal has always been, hey, you know, you're looking at that cheap siding. Did you realize that there's another material that actually might look better that won't cost more? Or, you know, I feel like that's always been the root of these conversations. It's consultancy. It's not, you know, we have, you know, fancy people on a committee who are going to make you spend more money.
Right. So those bits, especially that bit about like, because you wove in the affordability piece too, right? Like, I think that really needs to be more at the forefront of the presentation of this. Because the way I receive it, and even having, I still feel an angst about that affordability piece and the values embedded in the guidance that will be given. I need us to riff sort of more on that. And I also, another thing I got to say out loud is, you know, and my board mates know this, like I'm thinking about doing stuff at my house, and I just look at the planning board process and I feel overwhelmed, and I keep putting off like figuring out what I do, when I need to do it. And also, you know, I'm a sociologist, so I know the more layers to you that you add to these bureaucracies, it becomes a disincentive to either not act or to act without, filling us in on what we're doing.
Right.
So I
That's
also want to make sure that that helpful part of this, and that this isn't perceived as a burden and another thing that people need to do when they want to do stuff to their houses, especially when it triggers thoughts that it might make them cost money. I think we have to be, like the audience here isn't just the developers, right? It's our
right. No,
community at
that's
large,
very true.
and also people who, we want to be compliant with this process.
And if I could just cycle back, I mean, I think the breakthrough was short form, long form, maybe no form, right? So I don't know what kind of house you live in, KT, but if it's a 60s raised ranch, the standards for preservation are very, very low.
I grew up in one of those, but no, it's a 53. I don't know, what is it? I don't know what it's called.
Cape?
Cape, yes, very good.
Oh, yeah, those are sweet.
All right, well, come over and tell me what to do then.
tell me when and where, and I will. But
I'll be
seriously,
the guinea pig.
I mean, we're really concerned because developers kind of get this, right? These are financial ventures for developers, but for homeowners, it's a lot more emotional, right? And there's a lot of murkiness for all of us, right? We don't do this for a living, and we don't know what our options are. But that's, to Tim's point, here's this body of people who are willing to give you all kinds of time and come to your house and talk about options, and we're not going to charge a penny. So I get that message loud and clear, that this has to be kind of framed within, the helpful rather than the restrictive. But KT, here's something that also is on my mind. So both for new construction and for renovations, what do we do about the landlord or the flipper who in fact does just want to do it cheap, like will destroy the exterior of a nice property, yours or somebody else's, for a profit motive, and just slap up the worst thing.
When you said something earlier about the NBR to that effect, about, the developer being incentivized to go the cheapest route, right?
I mean, some are.
Right.
I don't think that
well, you don't want
zero
systems that do that, right? And it sort of relatedly, I thought in my head, it's just like policy has to be nuanced because one size doesn't fit all. And similarly, when we've talked about the, short-term rental law, we're like we want people to be able to do it if they own their home, but we don't want people sort of like you just described, to do it, like a developer with malintent. But so how do you get to where this, doesn't, what am I trying to say? It's like you started, it's different when you're looking at it as a homeowner than when you're looking at it as a developer. And again, we don't want to incentivize, doing the cheaper way or not filling us in on what people are doing. I don't know. We want to solve problems, not compound.
Yeah, we do. And, the tough thing in all these situations is, you only get one code. Like it's somewhere in the village code, it's got to say one thing. And the nuance, if you write it well, there's room for nuance. I mean, I think like with the short-term rental, there was some talk that if it's owned by an LLC, that's a pretty strong indication that it's not somebody's home that they're living in, right? I don't know if we have legal scope to think about that, but I would probably want to ask that question.
Well, if it's legally registered in the village, we know the answer to that question.
Yeah, but I mean, can we proceed distinguishing those two kinds of ownership? I don't know the legal answer to that.
Oh, you mean in order to, okay. Catching up.
I've been trying to figure that out. There's no answer right now.
Yeah, but it's, it kind of gets to the nub of it, doesn't it? That I'll tell you a slightly different question. I don't know how much time you all have to stick with this, but I would definitely like to hear your thoughts on if there's going to be a new downtown zone, does it stop at basically Prospect Street, or does it go to the edge of the village? And I see pros and cons. I think I know Tim's mind. He'd like to see all of Main Street. I definitely see where that could come in. And actually, there's another major project that would fall within that zone. It's been kind of on hold, but
I feel that we should be looking at the NBR B1 and B2 all very similarly. Because right now, Midtown New Paltz, where we have a B1, it's designed in a way, or the zoning was set up for a very different community. Like now we have zoning east of us on Main Street that's more similar to the NBR. Like, why would we have this section of the middle of Main Street that feels more residential?
right. Well, because traditionally it was.
Where we discourage density.
Right. That's a really interesting thing. That's part of the evolution of Main Street, right? That residential section, which is kind of peppered with a couple of restaurants and a couple of big houses that have changed into business, but those are all houses.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's a story there, right? When the middle school was built, it was the high school, and it was so far uptown, they lamented the walk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'm
inclined to this idea. I just don't remember. I didn't look. I just want to get back up to speed on what the implications of how does the rule book change if we do that? But my gut reaction is yes, and very much from the. I think it's defensible from just the geographical, and also from the simplifying things.
Yeah, right. So you don't have one neighbor
Yeah.
who is and one neighbor who isn't. Alex and Michelle, I'd be curious if you have strong thoughts on that Main Street question.
I'm looking at maps right now. One thing for me is that it's not intuitive to people what different zones are,
Right.
when they're, people don't know all the time if they're even in the village at all,
Right.
reaching out for tenant landlord type stuff, and then we
right.
have to figure out where they are exactly. So I don't want to potentially stick to, specific zones or anything. I want to make sure it's an intuitive, makes sense, I'm in this zone, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm in this district. However we can do that. But yeah, I want to look at more maps and think about it a little bit more.
That's actually a really good point, because it's only people who have to worry about B1 versus B2 that do. Probably the most intuitive thing is if it's on Main Street, it's in the zone, right? Everybody knows. And then the only question is where exactly it ends on the east end of the village, but it's marked. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I think keeping it as easy as possible is what would feel good for me, and make sure it's not a barrier, and is more of a helpful thing.
Yeah. Michelle, have you got strong feelings either way?
I feel similarly to what Alex described. I like the idea. It's definitely something I would want to just look into more deeply. But Alex, you're so right. People who don't live in the village aren't exactly sure where town and village end. So Main Street as a whole does seem simplified.
Yeah. That strikes me as maybe best for the public side of it. And we could see, we are going to see some development on the upper part of Main Street. We've already had a pretty detailed conversation, and I've seen architectural drawings for a project that's probably on hold because of COVID. But it would be nice if there were some binding review, so we have control over what that looks like. Bill, do you have any strong thoughts on the Main Street question?
Bill is on a fire call. I don't know if he came back yet.
Okay. Is there anything else I don't want to chew up your whole meeting, and I actually don't know how far you are in the agenda but
Yeah, we still have some meeting to go.
why don't I cycle off then if there is anything. I think what I'd like to do, kind of following Alex's suggestion, let me at some point fairly soon present you with two different maps of the downtown. Like this would be option A, option B, and kind of discuss what the implications would be of those two things. We can also, I drafted short and long forms, but never got really passed because I didn't really want to put in work if it's not going anywhere. To give, and this would be kind of KT to your point, that maybe it would be a calming thing to see how simple these forms are. So if what you're imagining for your CAPE, you might be very pleased to find out that this is one side of a piece of paper, if it's a small project.
Tom, you're filling out my form.
Even the long form isn't.
My free consultancy.
Yeah, exactly. I won't fill it out for you though. No, this sounds good. How about if we have a couple of weeks to work on this? The other thing I wanted to say is, I think there's a simplicity here. Whatever we can do through procedure, internal procedure, saves us from having to mess with code. Like I like that. I don't have ambitions to rewrite a lot of code or have a lot of meetings with Will Frank, but I think where we have to, we'd better, and everything else that can legally be done through procedure, I think we should try to do. Everybody, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
For
all your work and for sharing all of this.
Yep. I'll be back just like a bad odor. I'll come back. No, I'll be back. I'll give us a couple of weeks. We have to have an HPC meeting for sure, and then we'll talk more. Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.
Okay. Item number 6, I'd like to motion to set a public hearing for the proposed code changes regarding storm sewers and stormwater management.
Second.
Discussion. So the goal is to make sure that the planning board has a easy to follow review process when members consider impacts from adding impervious surface and appropriate remediation. And we tried to make it more clear and follow state laws regarding MS4, where the process is X when it's less than 1 acre, and then it's the New York State municipal separate storm sewer system compliance when it's greater than 1 acre. And then we identified the couple of spots in our planning review process to make sure that the thresholds are being followed. Any further discussion, or Ariana, when would this take place? This public hearing. Russell's here. We're going to do Russell as soon as I'm done setting this public hearing. Is the public hearing
April 14th?
April 14th is the next meeting.
That's the next meeting.
Okay, so we can have a public hearing on April 14th at 7 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Russell, thanks for joining us. It's always nice to hang out. So we have these two resolutions on our agenda. Tell us a little bit about what we need to do, and maybe just give us some background on where we are with our groundwater well projects.
Very happy to do that. Thanks for putting this on the agenda tonight. Nice to see everybody. And great to hear the prior conversation about architectural design standards. It's pretty cool. Makes me think back. I was on the Hyde Park Town Board and we were dealing with such matters. The The well project at both Moriello Park and the reservoir projects are moving along nicely. The engineering elements are proceeding briskly. We had a very helpful conversation with village input to mark up the drawings and weigh in on some of the engineering choices that are needed in both locations. So Blue was on and others were on. And so we got useful feedback, and we're closer and closer to the point where both engineering packages can be submitted to their respective DEC and DOH reviewers. The parallel track, of course, is the seeker process. And this is an urgent and right time to start the seeker process so that we stay on schedule, which is critical for multiple reasons, not the least of which is to provide you with water, but also to meet some funding requirements. So last Wednesday, we submitted draft resolutions to the village process to get onto the agenda. And the two resolutions essentially identify you, the village board, as the lead agency and start the 30-day public review process, welcoming input from the public and circulating details at a high level of the project to the review agencies. So the second document, which you probably just received in your inbox in the last 20 minutes, are the associated full environmental assessment forms for each project. And they provide at a high level a summary of the projects with the attachment. The part one form, which has many checkboxes and also some opportunities for some one-line answers on certain kinds of things. And so those are the things that get circulated. Our recommendation and request to the village board this evening is to pass the resolution and identifying yourselves as the lead agent and starting the seeker process and authorizing at the same time the mayor to sign the end of the bottom of the FEAF to indicate concurrence with the details that are in the FEAF forms. It is the way it always is, that there will be details that are identified in the next 30 days that we tweak, but as long as they're minor, the process can go ahead. And obviously, if issues are raised by the public or any of the agencies, the village board will need to respond to those. And that's what the seeker process is about. So that's my pitch this evening. This is definitely scramble period. We have the engineers working, we have the planners working, and you have me as the hydrogeologist wanting to have my wells put in work, in the harness for you. So I'm here tonight to make the pitch. And I am not the engineer and I'm not a deep planner, but I'd be very happy to try to answer any questions.
Before we continue the discussion, I'd like to motion that we approve the resolutions on agenda items 12 and 13 and cut and paste Russell's description for each of those.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion, questions for Russell? I mean, this is all the same projects that we've been talking about for years and years and years and years and years and years and years.
Spring is sprung and let's get some wells.
So if there's no question, go ahead.
And credit to Tim. I mean, there are details being worked out on the fly as we go. So that's what happens when you have a project that's moving quickly, and we're being attentive to details. So you have a good team working for you, and it's an exciting time. So thank you for being responsive tonight.
Yeah, and we have a good team with our staff.
Yep.
We had a workshop session with the consultants or the engineers from Russell's team, and then we have John Lawler and Blue Terwilliger from our Public Works Department, and Chris Yeager, who is our water treatment plant operator, everyone's around the table, everyone's brainstorming, everyone's poring over every detail. So a lot goes into all of these decisions, and those guys, they love the process. They love trying to ask your engineers hard questions, not because they're trying to stump them, but because they want a project that we can live with and that will be manageable and that will not cost us more money, but hopefully save our water fund money.
Yep,
So that's
and-
everything that we're working on. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right. Thanks for showing up. It's such short notice, Russell.
My pleasure. Nice to see everybody. Thanks and goodbye.
You too.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't hear back from Corey. I didn't know whether we needed to take an action regarding this unsafe building at 34 Church Street. I think there was some confusion in the newspaper because our conversation was reported on, but then there was a photo of the building across the street, and then that made a number of people, rightfully so, nervous and confused. And I have spoken with Corey about all that is involved. And in all honesty, I'm not sure what action we are supposed to be taking right now. So I'm fine.
So maybe we need an update because who knows what's transpired since last we spoke.
Right, and I circulated an email, and I wanted to see if Corey's probably busy on the same fire call that Bill
Yeah,
was
that's right.
attending.
There you go.
So maybe if we hear from someone, otherwise we just have to wait until an upcoming meeting. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. It says here, public employer health emergency plan for New Paltz. And Ariana, you're suggesting that we move this to the joint meeting on April 1st?
Yes, that is what Neil and I discussed.
Okay, sounds good. And then I'd like to motion that we approve re-upping our agreement with Google Workspace. The quote is for $1,503.40.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
And we have received proposals from Rycor to install mini splits in the upstairs of Village Hall and in the firehouse space, which will soon be the former firehouse space, as well as the building department. And this has been a project staring us in the face for a few years now, and we've been dragging our feet because we were uncertain about plans for the Village Hall campus. And now with the fire station underway and the plan for the town to take the old annex section of our building, and then the town would use the former or soon to be former court space. I feel like we're all now confident that it makes sense to invest in new heating and cooling and air purification systems for the building. But we also received better than expected quotes. I mean, there are some very significant incentives from New York State to upgrade to systems that are electric that will save us money and be less impactful in terms of their environmental footprint. So I'd like to motion that we go ahead and move forward with the proposals that we've received from Rycor to update the HVAC systems upstairs as well as in the firehouse building department. And then we also had a proposal for a new hot water heater, which coincidentally the hot water heater for Village Hall failed. It was an old school electric hot water heater. So we'd be moving to a heat pump version, which again would be more economical and environmental. So is all of that stuff in this attachment here that you included, Ariana?
I am not sure what the water heater is. I'm opening it right now. This might just be the mini splits.
I thought, right, I think we did receive a quote for the hot water heater, but the thing that we were waiting on was a quote from the electrician to install the hot water heater.
Ah, me. I have this from Heather here. I will link it.
And then the quote that is on the agenda, I believe that's just for the mini split upstairs. That does not include the mini splits in the soon to be former fire department space, or does it? Or no, it does, because it says heat pump in TV room, heat pump in meeting room 2, heat pump in building department.
There's 4.
Here, I'm gonna put the link in the chat so you can view it, and then I'll also drop it in the agenda.
I can't get it to open for some reason.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
not opening.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I think it's because it was I was trying to pull it from my email instead of from the drive.
It's probably, I mean, so we have a joint meeting on April 1st. We can wait and do this then to make sure that we have all 3 things, including the quote from the electrician.
That sounds good to me. If it's
Okay,
able
let's
to
do
wait.
that. Let's do that.
We are still waiting on that.
What'd you
That's
say? What? I didn't hear what you said, Ari.
I think she said we're still waiting on that.
Yeah, we are still waiting on the quote. We are still waiting for the electrician.
Yeah, so let's wait until we get all the details, and then we'll move it together just so it's extra clear. Okay, so then the next item is Kappa Alpha Gamma has a request to use Hasbrook Park. And the suggestion is to amend their previously approved from 2020 get together, but require them to make sure that any restrictions in terms of the number of people and other event guidelines per New York State are included. I like to motion that we approve it with the updated guidelines.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we already did the items 12 and 13 when Russell was here. So do we want to talk about leaf blowers tonight, or?
We're still working on adding lots of awesome tips and tricks on
Okay.
how to not use fossil fuels in your lawn care. So we'll keep working on it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think it's good to have a placeholder like that in the agenda. And
Well,
is that
you never know what kind of awesome tips and tricks people might send our way in the meantime when we have that placeholder. So, that's kind of what I was hoping for, is like, hint, hint, anyone who has a feeling about this, reach
Got
out
it.
to the Environmental Policy Board and I.
Perfect. Is the student loan debt resolution, is that still in draft as well? Or is that,
I didn't get to really incorporate tons of citations. Like I did a lot of a few little tweaks on it, since we last met. But KT shared a resource earlier today, but I was at work, so I didn't get to yet
Is there
even
any
look at it.
like reason we should do this sooner rather than later, or could we actually, apparently we have a joint meeting next week, ladies and gentlemen, so put that on your calendars. And they'll also, I guess, since I mentioned it, be approving the police reform, hopefully be approving the police reform agenda or report that night. So if you need some enticement.
Yeah. So I mean, the first 100 days, like the part of the point of this was, first 100 days of
Right,
the
exactly.
administration,
I mean, sorry.
so that's the one push, I guess. The other is, of course, my attendance is up in the air on April 1st. Like, it's April 1st, guys.
You have to get us a budget, and we understand.
I'll be at work until like the next day.
If things go as planned.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully. Hopefully I'll be at work. But that said, like, if you are all more comfortable with more citations and stuff, then I'll keep doing homework.
No, I mean, we can add those later, that part. I mean, maybe I could just verbally say the part about that I would add about localizing it, which is basically that the average, what do you call it? Now I'm trying to find the thing that I sent you to today, which is in a different email.
Well, in the meantime, if I can introduce it, maybe, and because I didn't even really talk about it much last meeting. A little bit more.
You're saying we can wait, or you don't? I'm just trying to suss out your desire.
I mean, I would like to not wait, so it's still 100 days resolution.
I mean, this is like very much in the discourse today, in the national discourse, right? I mean,
yeah.
This is like this is happening as we speak.
Right.
So,
up to you all.
I didn't anticipate voting on it today.
Okay.
Well, let's wait, and then let us.
Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it next Wednesday or next Thursday?
That would be cool.
Well, unless Alex.
Well, I mean,
maybe you could just come for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's try for
Shout
that.
out to Eli Campbell that's been helping us with this, and
thanks, Eli.
yeah, I mean, basically, there's just an unbelievably cogent argument for canceling student debt in a pandemic economy. The average student debt in our region, my data shows about 30% of people in the region have student debt, and the average in New York State, I don't have that regional average, but in the state is something like between $350 and $400 a month. And if you look at a monthly budget, you take that nut out and people can buy food and keep roofs over their heads. It really constrains people's.
So would this just be for the debt that was provided by publicly funded debt, or it wouldn't touch like Sally Mae stuff or Navy and stuff, would it?
Well, I don't know. I think that's some of the stuff that they're working out now.
Yeah, I like the idea of going for all of the student debt. I think they need a push to try to figure that out. It's interesting, some of that Sally Mae student debt, it would be rough, for some folks to, not have their student debt canceled, Like,
There's
let's-
lots of different configurations.
Yeah.
Not just based on the lender, but also based on the status, not everybody, certain income groups, et cetera. I'm not up to speed on what's,
Okay, well, let's take a closer look at the resolution for next week.
Cool.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to do well, is Bill still not here? Okay, how about a ZBA liaison report?
The special meeting is Tuesday, the 30th. There's been no meeting since the last one, but the special meeting for the Ann Oliver House will happen this Tuesday coming. That's it.
Okay, and then I added to the end of this agenda the motion to adopt the 21-22 budget. Are you all comfortable with that, or do you want to look at the budget and make any changes as a board? We could do this, at the April 14th meeting.
I kind of want Bill here to do it. I mean, I'm
Okay, so let's wait until the
fine, but I
14th.
feel like he
That's
should.
fine. So
I
this is
second
just a
KT's
placeholder for the,
hesitation.
this is a placeholder for the 14th meeting. So I don't think there's anything else, right?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Big yay vote.